So, towing with a Suzuki Jimny, this is going to be a look at the weights and the limits, and I've made this video at the request of one of my patrons who has noticed a lot of people getting into towing with Jimnys. So let's take a look at the limits first, and the first one is the Jimny can tow 1300 kilograms, but that is an absolute maximum and it is only with trailer brakes. We'll explain what they are later on. It can tow 350 kilograms without any trailer brakes. Again, we'll get to that later on. The tow ball mass, which is the weight on the end of the drawbar and the tow hitch when you put it on, is a maximum of 75 kilograms. You can put 600 kilograms over the front axle maximum, 800 over the rear, and the gross vehicle mass, the maximum the vehicle can weigh, standard is 1435, unless you've had a GVM upgrade. And normally there is a GCM or gross combined mass for the trailer and the tow car combined, but it's not specified for the Jimny, so we don't need to worry about it. Now let's take a look at towing and GVM. We'll start off with the base weight, which is about 1100 kilograms unladen. We take that 1435 GVM and we subtract one for the other, and we come up with that payload of 335 kilograms, which is how much weight we can put into the vehicle. Now that includes all your accessories like taller tyres, yourself, your camping gear, a bull bar, a roof rack. All of that goes into 335 kilograms and it disappears very quickly, which is why GVM upgrades are so popular. Now here's the thing, if we add a 50 kilogram tow ball mass onto that, what happens is that that comes out of the payload as well. So we take that 335, we subtract 50, and we actually end up with only 285 kilograms of payload. So if you are towing so you can carry more stuff, bear in mind that probably means you can carry more stuff in the trailer but less in the car when you're actually towing. So the key thing there is the tow ball mass adds to your payload. 50 kilograms of tow ball mass is 50 kilograms less payload. Right, so how heavy a trailer can I tow? Well, it's not necessarily that 1300 kilogram maximum. You can't just look at a trailer and go, yes, that will be fine. It's unlikely you're going to be able to do that. We'll start off with the 1300 and 350 again, and we've got the 75 kilogram tow ball mass limit. So those are the limits we're going to run into, and the GVM as well, and the rear axle limit. The front axle limit isn't really going to be a problem because we'll get into that in a moment, but those are the limits you're going to run into. So it's whichever one of these limits comes up first, which may not necessarily be that 1300 kilogram braked tow. You could well run into one of the others first. Now, if you want to know more about towing limits, just go to my website and use this towing calculator, and then you can put in all the numbers and that will spit out exactly what your limits are once you've input all the data. Alright, so here's what happens if you have too much tow ball mass, where you can see that the back of the car is pitched down. You're going to have limited steering, and the reason for that is that you're going to have a lot less weight on the front axle, and the more weight or load on the front axle you've got, the more grip you have. And what you have here is a lot of grip on the back and not much grip on the front, and that means the car's likely to plough straight on and not want to steer, and it certainly won't want to corner very well. Braking will also be impaired as well, because like most cars, the Jimny has a front bias to the brakes, and with not a lot of weight on the fronts, well, it's not going to be able to do much braking. There's a lot of weight on the back, but the back axle, back wheels don't have as much braking force as the front. There'll be a bouncy ride because the back of the car is going to be pretty much sagging on the bump stops. It's potentially unsafe. It's going to be exceeding limits. So you do not want to be exceeding tow ball mass limit on this vehicle, particularly because it's not the greatest handler in the world, and it's got very soft, rather poor suspension out of the factory. Alright, so let's talk about rear axle load limit, which is important for all vehicles. Now, 50 kilograms of tow ball mass unfortunately means, in the case of the Jimny, around about 65 on the rear axle. And if you go up to the maximum of 75, that's around 100 kilograms added to the rear axle. So with the stock car, it's probably got unladen around about 650 kilograms on the rear axle. There's an 800 limit. You add 100, so you're getting very close to the rear axle limit once you put that 75 kilograms tow ball mass on. So that's the problem you've got. Now here's how it works. We've got the wheelbase here, and then we've got the distance from the centre of the rear wheels to the tow hitch. We take 75 kilograms pressing down here. That's actually about 100 there, but it's 25 off the front axle, and that's the way the maths work. So the 75 adds to the GVM in total, but it's 100 over the front axle, just rough figures here, and 25 off. Alright, so more about that TBM limit. Now, Australian trailers generally run sort of between 6 and 12% tow ball mass, and there is, people talk about the 10% tow ball mass rule. That is not a target. Absolutely not a target. It's just a general rule of thumb, and it's not even a particularly good rule of thumb either. Now, here's the thing. You are very unlikely to find a travel trailer which weighs 1,000 kilograms and has a tow ball mass of 75 kilograms or less. This Jayco J-Pod, for example, has a tow ball mass well in excess of 75 kilograms, and it's pretty light. So the limiting factor for Jimny towing is very often likely to be that 75 kilograms tow ball mass, not the 1,300 kilogram max brake tow. Now, the other thing is that even if you did have a trailer which was 1,300 kilograms, with only 75 kilograms tow ball mass, that's only 5.8% on the ball, which is not a huge amount for stability. That's right at the low end of what I would consider good for stability. And again, we've got a short wheelbase vehicle here, which is not the greatest handler in the world, doesn't have the best electronic calibration. I would not be wanting to tow 1,300 kilograms with that vehicle for sure. So yeah, you really want to keep your trailer loaded weight significantly below the car weight. Now let's talk about trailer brakes. We talked about braked and unbraked towing, so explain what they are. So the definitions of unbraked tow is literally exactly what it sounds. There's no brakes at all on the trailer, so all the braking has to be done by the tow car. With a braked tow, there are brakes on the trailer, so the trailer can operate its own brakes. That's the difference between the two. Now there's two types of brakes. There's overrun brakes. Now these are very basic. Essentially, the tow car slows down and the trailer goes into the back of the tow car, and then that operates the brakes. So in other words, the brakes only work when the whole lot is slowing down, and there's no adjustment. It's a fixed amount of braking depending on how much the car is slowing down. So it's a pretty basic and primitive system. Then you've got electric brakes, and these are far, far superior for many different reasons. First of all, you can operate them independently of the tow car, so you can have just the trailer brakes operating and not touch the brakes on the tow car, and that's great for getting rid of trailer sway, which is a really big issue when you're towing anything approaching the weight of the vehicle. And when you're off-road, then it's great to be able to operate the trailer brakes or not operate the trailer brakes, depending on what it is. And you can also adjust the sensitivity, so you might have the brakes down a bit low if there's not much weight in the trailer, and if the trailer is heavier, then you put the sensitivity of the brakes up and then vary it a bit. So trailer brakes are far, far superior. Now the Jimny limit, we've talked about that. 350 kilograms is the unbraked tow limit. The law says that you can use overrun brakes up to 2,000 kilogram gross trailer mass, which is just well beyond what this is, but I don't think they really considered Jimny, so I would not be wanting to tow anywhere near 1,300 kilograms on overrun brakes, even though it's actually legal, because I don't think the law really considered a vehicle this small when it was being formulated. So my advice is use trailer brakes over 200 kilograms, and I would always use electric brakes, not overrun for this sort of towing. Now, if I get a GVM upgrade, can I tow heavier? Sadly, the answer is probably not, because that does nothing to increase the brake towing capacity. It's still a light vehicle with poor handling, and I do have another detailed video about GVM upgrades and the effect on towing. It can, in certain circumstances, increase it. The main advantage of a GVM upgrade is that the suspension will be much better, much heavier duty, and much more suited to towing. It won't increase your braked towing, but it will make the Jimny better able to tow what its limit actually is. Alright, so let's talk about the ideal Jimny trailer, which is obviously small. So first of all weights within limits. I think it should have electric brakes. I reckon no more than 60 kilograms tow ball mass. I reckon probably at 800-900 ATM or weight for the maximum. Same wheel size as the Jimny, and also same PCD stud pattern. So that means if you needed to, you could take a wheel off the Jimny and put it on the trailer, and weight should be over the axles and with just a little bit above to give you the tow, a little bit ahead just to give you the tow ball mass, and then also the same track as the Jimny. Now the track is the distance between the centre of the front or centre of the left and right wheels, and if that's the same as the trailer, then that gives you an advantage when you're off-road, because then it will follow the Jimny in the same ruts, and it'll also be a bit of an aerodynamic boon as well, as opposed to having it much wider than the Jimny. So towing modifications for the Jimny, well, obviously you'd want a tow bar. I think electric brakes would be an excellent idea. I'd definitely be going for a suspension upgrade because that suspension is really not suited to any form of heavy load. I don't even suit it to no load actually. A long-range tank would be a good idea. We all know the Jimny's a thirsty little beast, and towing is only going to increase your fuel consumption often, sometimes quite dramatically, so a long-range tank would be a good idea. If the trailer is wider than the Jimny, which is not something I'd recommend, you'll need towing mirrors so you can see by it if it's a caravan. All right, now summary then. So remember, Jimny is a small car. It cannot tow, it cannot do all of the big things which the larger wagons can do, so don't try and make it do that. But I think towing is a absolutely great idea of a Jimny, just got to be a small trailer. Remember, the limit is whatever is reached first. Brake tow TBM, we don't have a GCM on the Jimny, so whichever limit is first. I reckon just limit those trailers down to 800 kilograms. Electric brakes are good as well. Suspension upgrade advisable, and watch my towing videos, use my towing calculator, put the numbers in there, and remember, just don't tow heavy with a Jimny, and then it will do the job and you should have plenty of fun pulling a trailer. So I hope you found this video useful. If you've got any questions, please drop them in the comments, and thank you for watching.